Hi friends, many of us think that corona is the deadliest virus happened till date. Many countries have given it a stamp of pandemic. Economies are going down, unemployment is at its peak. Can this get worse? Well, let's check the numbers. At the time of recording this video, total corona cases are 29 million, of which 21 million are recovered and 900,000 are dead. Let's compare it with the great influenza, Spanish flu, which happened in 1918 and went till 1920. According to Wikipedia, it infected 500 million people, about a third of world's population at the time, in four successive waves. The death toll is typically estimated to have been somewhere between 17 million and 50 million, making it one of the deadliest pandemics in human history. Generally, influenza causes its mortality among the elderly and infants due to their inadequate immune defense systems. But the 1980 pandemic was highly unusual, in which approximately half of the casualties were young men and women in their 20s and 30s. As many as 8 to 10% of all young adults may have died of influenza, which is a large number for any disease or virus. The 1918 virus killed more people in absolute numbers than any other sudden outbreak of disease in history. It killed more people in 24 weeks than AIDS has so far killed in 24 years, and more people in a year than bubonic plague killed in a century. Bubonic plague, also called as Black Death, is caused by bacteria Yersinia persist. It can spread through contact with infected fleas. Symptoms include swollen lymph nodes, which can be as large as chicken eggs, in the groin, armpit, or neck. They may be tender and warm. Others include fever, chills, headache, fatigue, and muscle aches. Bubonic plague requires urgent hospital treatment with strong antibiotics. The influenza virus brought havoc to its victim's body, particularly the lungs. Many of those afflicted had an irrepressible cough and bleeding. Blood came out mostly from the nose, but in many cases also from the ears or from the mouth. As a result of coughing, the body was said to have aged to the point that it felt as if the bones were breaking. The skin of the patient changed colors to blue, violet, or even black. At times, some Caucasian patients could not be distinguished from naturally black people. The primary cause of death was hemorrhagic pneumonia. Another unusual aspect of 1918 influenza was that the virus struck its victims suddenly. Many people remembered precisely the moment that they first felt ill. Around the world, people dropped from their horses or suddenly collapsed while walking. This didn't mean that they collapsed at the moment they were infected. The incubation time of the influenza virus was about 24 to 72 hours, compared to 2 to 10 days for the Black Death. The virus needed about 24 hours to infect a cell, replicate itself into millions of copies, and release its progeny. This did mean that after the virus had replicated, it subdued its victims in a dramatic, uncompromising fashion. Death could come rapidly. A person could appear well at one moment and collapse and die at the next moment. In Philadelphia, priests drove horse drawn wagons going from house to house, calling upon people who lived in horror and grief to open their doors and bring out dead bodies. What was happening in Philadelphia was happening everywhere in the US and in the world. The emergence. While evidence is lacking, some scientists believe that the pandemic was likely originated from the United States, most likely in Haskell County, Kansas, in early 1918. Dr. Loring Miner cared for violent influenza cases with pneumonia and severe body ache and headache in late February and early March 1918. The virus might have been carried to a huge nearby army base, Camp Funston, a part of Fort Riley, and from there to Europe, especially France. When it reached the army base into France and Spain, the virus might have mutated to become a milder variant. In spring 1918, it was spread throughout Europe, where in Spain it was called Spanish flu. From there, it went on to nearly every continent, including South America, Asia, Africa, and Australia. Many people were sick, but severe pneumonia and death were uncommon. The spread of the virus was greatly facilitated by the movement of the armies in World War I. Soldiers were disproportionately more affected by the virus due to their close and confined contact with each other. During the spring and summer of 1918, the virus had been circulating and constantly changing. all over the world. In late August 1918, the virus turned into a much more deadly form and a new wave of severe pandemic struck the globe. In the ensuing months, the influenza plague devastated the world. In the US, the severe influenza pandemic first spread among the army bases when the soldiers returned from the Europe. Then it passed on into civilians. A case happened showing the explosive nature of the pandemic. The Liberty Loan Parade, one of the greatest parades in the history of Philadelphia, took place on September 28, 1918. At the time, the Philadelphia Navy Yard already had 1,400 soldiers hospitalized with influenza, and the city hospitals had admitted 200 more cases, including 123 civilians. In the days after the parade, Philadelphia's hospitals were overwhelmed with hundreds of thousands of new cases of influenza infected by the severe type of virus found in the Navy Yard. Hundreds, eventually almost 1,000 died each day for several weeks. The Great Influenza Virus. Influenza and other viruses, such as coronaviruses, are responsible for 90% of the infections of the upper respiratory tract. Bacterial infection is only a small portion. Coronaviruses cause the common cold and sore throats and were also the cause of SARS outbreak in 2002. Influenza virus infects cells lining the surface of the respiratory system and is usually restricted to the upper respiratory tract before the immune system wipes the cells or viruses out. Depending on the preparedness of the person's immunity against the invading influenza virus, the virus may penetrate deeper into the lung and cause pneumonia. Under normal circumstances, a person would eventually gain the upper hand and recover fully within the 10 days. Nevertheless, influenza virus kills about 36,000 people every year in the United States, even without outbreaks of mild epidemics or pandemics. These deaths usually occur in the very old and very young with immune systems that are compromised or not fully developed. Viruses by themselves cannot sustain life and are lifeless beings. They do not consume anything, no energy, no oxygen. However, after gaining access to their host, they become alive, malicious, and selfish. They hijack cells for their own benefit, namely replicating itself, the one and only thing that the virus does. It doesn't even do this by itself. Under the commands of viral genes, the host does all the work for the virus. Like a computer virus, whose only purpose is to replicate itself under the commands contained in two digits, 1 and 0. A virus replicates itself under the commands contained in the four letters of DNA or RNA. A, C, G, T, U instead of T in RNA. Genes direct the actions of a cell to self-replicate. There are two types of viruses, those that possess a DNA genome and those with the RNA genome. Due to the proofreading mechanisms associated with the DNA polymerase, errors occurring during the DNA replication are rare. This is not the case with the RNA viruses, and many mutations occur in the viral genome, and this is especially so with the influenza and HIV. The influenza virus mutates the fastest, and when the 100,000 or 1 million progeny viruses are ready to burst open and kill the host cell, 99% of them are so greatly changed that they are defective and incapable of infecting another cell and reproducing again. The remaining 10,000 viruses are still capable of infecting other cells. Influenza virus assumes a spherical shape and is about 1 by 10,000 of a millimeter in diameter. The virus causing the 1918 pandemic was designated H1N1, and H3N2 is the form which has been circulating in recent years. The gradual change of the virus, known as antigenic drift, happens all the time. When a bird virus strain changes enough that it can infect human cells directly or indirectly, it becomes a new identity or strain. In 1997, in Hong Kong, a virus designated H5N1 was transmitted directly from chickens to humans and infected 18 and killed 6 people. Fearful of a catastrophe, Hong Kong public health officials ordered the slaughter of each and every one of the 1.2 million chickens in Hong Kong. The race to find the pathogen and the cure. The race to discover the pathogen and the cure commenced throughout the world in 1918. Many eminent scientists, including Emily Rox of Pasteur Institute in France and Richard Pfeiffer in Berlin, Germany, took part. Scientists with the slightest background in infectious diseases turned their attention and energy towards researching this plague. In the United States, Welch Army General Surgeon William Gorgas and Rockefeller Institute President and scientist Rufus Cole, among others, spearheaded the chase. Cole had successfully developed a vaccine for pneumonia just before the pandemic. Scientists needed to elucidate at least the following three aspects of the pandemic. First, the epidemiology of the disease, how it was spread. Second, the pathology, what damage it caused in the body. And third, the pathogen. In Europe, Richard Pfeiffer, one of Robert Koch's disciples and scientific director of the Institute for Infectious Diseases in Berlin, had isolated a new bacterium, which he confidentially named Bacillus influenza. Later, it was renamed Haemophilus influenza in most of the patients. However, it was not found in all patients. Scientists in other parts of the world were also not uniformly able to isolate the bacteria from patients. In addition, vaccines produced against the bacteria did not offer an unequivocal protection. Pfeiffer was of enormous stature, and his reputation was perhaps just under Louis Pasteur, Robert Koch, and Paul Ehrlich. There was considerable debate and even agony about whether the Bacillus influenza was indeed the pathogen. Well, it was not. Louis and his protege, Richard Soap, continued their search for clues. In 1929, Louis died from the yellow fever in Brazil on a research assignment for Rockefeller Foundation to study the very disease that killed him. Based on Louis' methodology of using a filter to separate the smallest pathogens, example a virus, from bacteria, Shope discovered that the cause of influenza in pigs and found that it was a virus. In 1931, with work performed in late 1920s, he published his findings, co-authored with Louis, in the Journal of Experimental Medicine, the most prestigious medical research journal at the time. The journal was published by Johns Hopkins and edited by Welch. Later, it was discovered that the pig influenza virus was a direct descendant of the 1918 pandemic virus, since antibodies from the survivors of the 1918 pandemic were able to protect pigs from infections of the swine virus. Later in 1933, in a minor influenza outbreak in England, Soap's friend and collaborator C.H. Andrews and other colleagues Patrick Landlau and Wilson Smith, using Soap's methodology, found the human influenza pathogen. Now something which is not available in this book, but I found on the internet. It was not until 1930s that researchers established that influenza was in fact caused by a virus, not a bacterium. Pfeiffer's influenza bacillus would eventually be named Haemophilus influenza, the name retaining the legacy of its long-standing, though inaccurate association with influenza. And today, influenza vaccines, as well as H influenza type B vaccines, are widely available to prevent illness. If you want to read these points in much more detail, you can purchase this book from the link in description. You can read the book and get much more valuable advice from the author. If you don't have time to read books, don't worry about it. You can keep visiting my channel. I post book summaries every Sunday. If you want me to make any book summary of your choice, do comment below and let me know. If you want to support me, you can buy anything from Amazon using the affiliate link in description. I hope I have the pleasure of your time for this book summary. If I do, please like this video. Share it with your friends and family. Subscribe to my channel Gyanur for book summaries in English and Gyanur Hindi where I upload Hindi book summaries. And hit the bell icon so that you will get notified every time I upload a new video. And in the end, I want to say thanks for watching.